Hello, everybody, all 265 of you. It's been 3 months since I uploaded the last podcast. Thanks for being here if you happen to catch this one. Left off with some more serious content last time. We were looking at data mergers and the CIA in relation to the general vibe of the and subject matter of the content online at the time that podcast was uploaded. And what was underlying it all is something I've mentioned before, which is the Clauset-Newman-Moore cluster algorithm, and how this algorithm is in operation on a background website, sort of manipulating and clustering and compiling data together in such a way that an overall effect is generated within online content, how we think, and the events that happen to us in our daily lives. If you're new to this channel and this is the first podcast that you're listening to, I highly recommend you get the first book. I highly recommend that you go back to the first bunch of podcasts, the What is the Simulation podcasts, for the verbal summary of all the research files, just to put you a bit more in the picture of what I'm about to talk about. What I wanted to share with you today is following on from previous podcasts and research files to do with, as I mentioned, the Clauset-Newman-Moore cluster algorithm, which is background functional on a website called nodexl-graphgallery.org, employed by the Social Media Research Foundation, who have the audacity really to data mine all our content across multiple networks. And the way in which they do this is they run an algorithm to extract flagged words, keywords, predominantly for the use of marketers and advertisers, to gain key insights into what we're all talking about across a wide range of subjects, sometimes to do with their own products or more broadly. And what concerns me in the lack of ethical application of this particular group, this foundation, which consists of Microsoft employees and a few others, is that they don't just data mine product content. They don't just data mine people who are talking about certain products to get an idea of how they could best advertise. And people who buy this software that they sell do this, but the Social Media Research Foundation themselves run this algorithm and this data mining tool all the time. They actually use it all the time, 24 hours a day, and they are constantly data mining the entirety of social media. Politics, war, disease. It honestly looks more like a massive data collection site for a government agency. It is no longer, and has not been for a very long time, a simple matter of somebody with some software who wanted to just make it easier for marketers to data mine certain topics about the products they're selling to get a better idea of how to advertise to people. This group is data mining everything with a keen focus on what is governmental, political, the health industry, anything that pops out in the news media, absolutely everything. And what the overall effect of this has been, according to my research, is incredibly destructive. The algorithm itself is insane. The way that it works is that it pulls together content based on words, word similarity, groups of people who are talking. For example, the name Ford. This algorithm does not distinguish between the surname Ford or Ford Cars or the Ford Company. The simple word Ford is data mined into the same cluster of data as entirely unrelated content that just so happens to mention the word Ford, but in an entirely different context. You might be thinking, well, how is this really a problem? Well, here's the thing. What this company does, this foundation does, they publish their findings on the website. And they deep link all the user profiles on social media that have mentioned it, or are within the vicinity of mentioning it, or are connected to people who have mentioned it. And once the data is uploaded, is republished and recoded, it enters our data field. Now, if you've heard the previous podcasts and you're up to date with the previous files and you've read the books, you'll know by now that mobile internet is constantly in the airwaves across multiple frequencies at once, and nearly everybody has a smartphone. What this means for human beings and the way our minds work at a subconscious level is we are being constantly penetrated and impacted by these subtler communications that are occurring via radio waves. And we do pick it up, whether we can audibly hear it or not, whether we can feel it or not, whether we can sense it or not. Our brain picks up the information and it translates it, and it intimately interferes with our thought processes, our decisions, and our emotions. This being said, in following on, I want to give you the perfect example of the most recent ridiculous situation that I have experienced in my own life, which gives me further proof that this algorithm, the nature of AI, the nature of social media, and the destructive stupidity of smartphones and the internet has had 100% proof. Back in June of this year, I needed to buy a property. I found what it was that I wanted, and it was advertised as a renovation. The reason being, it was an older property and it needed some love. So, as the course of it went, I was presented with the contract and the vendor statement. And myself and my conveyancer at the time noticed that there was a caveat on the title and that a couple of pages were missing that must be provided by law. So we asked for the pages. and we asked for the caveat to be removed. For any of you who don't know what a caveat is a warning to anyone wanting to buy the property that somebody else has an interest in the land and it can't be purchased until that caveat is removed. So we asked for an urgent removal, which can happen in a few ways. A letter of demand can be sent asking the person who's put it there to get rid of it, which can take a couple of weeks. Or you can file through Section 90 with the Supreme Court to get it removed so that it can accommodate a settlement date. Or if you want to take the slow lane, you apply through Section 89A and you have to wait around 6 weeks for it to be lifted. So the other side assured us that all these things would be done. They left the settlement date as what it was, which was in about 6 weeks' time. And all was fine and dandy until the last week of July, when we were notified that they would not meet settlement because the caveat hadn't been removed, and it likely wouldn't be removed for another couple of weeks after that, but they couldn't really say for sure. Now, right there, when you're dealing with contracts and dates and deadlines, nobody is really at liberty to say they don't really know for sure when they can settle the property without at the same time surrendering their right to claim any entitlement to the deposit that you've paid or the rest of your money. Nonetheless, this is what occurred. Prior to that, I had already sustained financial damages because we had a license agreement drawn up to accommodate their stupid caveat, and the other side sabotaged it because they wouldn't let me into the property to remove health and safety hazards, the predominant one being carpet that was so disgusting you're better off not even walking on it at all. But for some reason, the vendor, I don't know, maybe he just likes being argumentative and precious, but he wouldn't let me remove it. So I had to cancel the license agreement, couldn't move in on the settlement date to accommodate his caveat, and sustained financial damage as a result. I got to, the other thing is that his conveyancer caused mine to resign 6 days before settlement. I had discussion with my conveyancer at one point about some of the legal issues that were arising, and I needed to speak to her about whether or not she felt capable of handling those matters because conveyancers aren't lawyers. And in the event that I needed to seek outside legal advice, I wanted to make sure with her that, that was all going to be okay, or whether she felt that the particular legal issues that we were dealing with was something that she'd be able to handle. And in doing that, it was probably going to take us a couple of days to talk through it. And so I put through a call to the agent to let the other side know that we were pausing for a couple of days and just not to communicate during that time, in the event that my conveyancer may perhaps got an email or a question or something and may have, answered the wrong thing, not knowing that there were legal implications that I hadn't been able to discuss with her. So it was precautionary, and it was to avoid confusion or crossed wires, and I let the other side know as a courtesy, in case they didn't hear back from us from a couple of days if they had a question or they wanted to touch base. What the other side's conveyancer did is they this woman emailed my conveyancer and told her that I had told them not to accept any communication from her. Now, can you imagine how that went down with my conveyancer? She had no idea why. She had no idea what it was about. She was incredibly upset and incredibly hurt, and simply came back to me and said that she wouldn't represent anybody who did that. Rather than going through the whole drama of it, she resigned, and I was then left without conveyancing 6 days prior to the contracted settlement date. And I had to scramble around trying to find someone at short notice who eventually was only squeezing me in and didn't really have enough time or capacity to address the legal issues that needed addressing. So here we are, it's settlement, they default on settlement. I've got a new conveyancer that I can barely get hold of. I'm at a legal disadvantage. They haven't given any idea of a settlement date. I don't hear from them for 3 days after they default on settlement because their caveat's not removed. They don't pay me the courtesy of even touching base and setting a new settlement date. And because I'd already sustained financial damage, the license had been sabotaged, and the settlement date hadn't been reached, and all my plans for renovation had been thrown out, and I'd planned for weeks. I was looking at significant financial damages in the long term because what was happening was that I would have to go to the vendor and ask him to make adjustments on the purchase price to accommodate my financial damages. And because they was so extreme already, I knew that wasn't going to happen. And I didn't want to find myself in a situation where I was purchasing a place that I didn't even know when I was going to get the title, and there was very little chance that he would even adjust the purchase price, and I would end up having to take him to court. So once he defaulted on settlement, 3 days later, I cancelled, and I asked for a refund of my deposit. The other interesting thing about this is that for the whole time, I had asked many, many times for full transparency about the caveat and the guy who put it on the title, called the caveator. I asked over and over, is he likely to object to the removal of it? Is he going to be a problem? I want to get an idea of how long I'm going to be waiting for this property for. What is the nature of this caveat? Why was it put there? And the response that I received on 2 occasions from the other side was that it was to do with the previous purchase that didn't go through. And the papers showed that the caveat had been there since 2019, so it was obviously redundant and old and just still hanging around and could have been easily removed through his solicitor. Nonetheless, they lodged through Section 89A, which is the slow lane, and there can be no definite period of time that they can give you as to when your house might settle. I had even asked for over and over what method they chose to lodge this removal, or whether or not they'd sent a letter of demand. And in every respect, they did not appear to show much consideration for the settlement date. They didn't file for a good 10 days after we requested it. And because we were running a short settlement of 6 weeks, they also agreed to a 6-week settlement, signed it, and at no time did they make any attempt to change the settlement date out of courtesy, out of query, out of consideration. They were just off running their own little show with their special little caveat and doing whatever they liked in repudiating the contract in its entirety, in its terms for efficiency, expediency. The vendor warranties were all wrong. So for a long time I had and the contract was dated incorrectly as well, because the agent who put it through did it under US-Canada time zone. I mean, honestly, the list is endless. I've never seen a real estate deal go so completely pear-shaped as this. And so 3 days after I cancel, I've had enough. I've already been hit pretty hard financially. I'm not up for any more. I don't want to be pushed into a situation where things aren't clear and there's no end in sight as to when I would get the title, which would then further impact my finances. And, well, you should have the uproar when I cancelled and simply asked for my deposit back, citing the defective vendor statement, how the missing pages were never produced, despite giving them all the time in the world, and the fact that the vendor had defaulted on settlement. Well, their argument was that I'm supposed to give him 14 days before I'm allowed to cancel. That's not actually true. Somebody can cancel anytime they like. And if they have valid reason and you're dealing with a reasonable vendor, you can actually come to the table and say, listen, deal's off from my end. We need to talk about the refund of my deposit because here are the issues that have occurred. Here's the financial damage that I've sustained. And seeing as it's around the same amount as the deposit, how about you just give me the deposit back and we'll call it even? Real estate deals fall through all the time, especially residential. They fall through all the time for one reason or another. And usually people work it out because they want to avoid going to court. Unless you happen to get a vendor who is precious, argumentative, isn't interested in negotiating, isn't interested in any other process except the exit scam of stealing the deposit. For what? For not providing the property as advertised. Fascinating, right? So then it became a consumer rights issue, which it was from the start, and I had tried to solve it through the agent. The agent refused to handle the matter on their own behalf with regard to consumer law. They handballed it to the vendor's solicitor, who wanted to argue that it was contract law that needed to be the guideline on how this was going to be decided. And this guy did not listen to a single one of my reasons. Not a single legitimate reason that I presented did he bother paying any credence to at all. Their plan from the outset was to try and offload this property onto somebody else. There'd been a problem tenant, as I found out. The place had been put under sheriff's quarantine. They had to forcibly evict the tenant. And the 3 broken windows that I previously didn't have a problem with because they could have been done by kids are likely to have been caused by the problem tenant returning and smashing the windows to try and get into the property or to simply damage it. So then we had the issue of my personal safety being at risk because this guy can't be located, and he's the same one who put the caveat on the title. So I have every reason to believe that he's still pissed off with the vendor. I have every reason to believe the guy is probably violent. The fact that he can't be located, there is no guarantee that he won't return to the property and hurt me if I was to inhabit it. This solicitor of the vendor does not care. He has no interest whatsoever in my safety to the degree that he actually lied. He lied and said that the guy left voluntarily. Now, if you have followed any of what I've just said to you, I'm hoping that maybe you don't have experience in real estate, so if you do, great. For those of you that don't, I'll give you the short story. What this algorithm does, for a start, my first name is the same name as the vendor's witness. My surname has the same, is very similar to the vendor's surname. So right off the bat, we have proof. If you ever go to this Note Excel website and you see how this algorithm works, you'll see why this is proof. You'll see that the system had already concocted that I would contract with this guy based on similarity. And the Clauset-Newman-Moore algorithm is a similarity algorithm. I mean, all the Google crawlers and everything, they all pull together information based on similarity. So it's right there. We've got similar names. My first name's similar to his witness's name, his partner's name, whoever it was. And the property number was number 10, which in EBCDIC is 10 repeat. And, you know, the whole time my intuition was sounding off a red alarm, and they were absolutely fatiguing in their secrecy about this problem tenant. And then I eventually found out why. Nonetheless, the short story is AI and this algorithm, what it does is it messes with people mentally to such an extent that they lose all sight of ethics, common sense, reason, compassion, empathy, congeniality, respect, consideration, and they forfeit their sanity. In not a single instance have I received a sane, level-headed, considerate, lawful response from the other side. In every respect, they have responded unlawfully. In every respect, they have refused me my rights, my consumer rights, and my contractual rights. They are only focused on taking the deposit. What this solicitor did after they couldn't provide a clear title, and I cancelled, when they finally got clear title, they gave me 48 hours notice to hand over the rest of the money and threatened me if I didn't do it. Yes, really. They actually threatened me. It's just a common everyday residential sale, and the other side is acting like he doesn't even have his house anymore. And I'm over here going, I know this guy can just resell his house. It's going to cost a whole lot less than me having to take him to court for stealing my deposit. It is utterly mind-blowing. We're talking a dark age mentality that is no different to what went on in England, the dictatorships that went on in the dark ages. And the only places this type of mentality still exists in the world today is undesirable places over in the Middle East or God knows where else, where they're still in Africa, where they're still trying to deal with this archaic mindset, which is completely lacking in all sense of spiritual maturity and totally allegiant to the nonsensical garbage of social media, iPhones, and an algorithm which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever, and a background coding, artificially intelligent, that is pre-coded to destroy every single right that a human being has. All of them. I've been dealing with this particular situation since the middle of July, and we're now nearly the middle of September. 2 months of dealing with the lowest mentality, the least ethical mentality, the least rights-respecting mentality. And to top it off, they still think they're entitled to my money because the contract says so. They cannot even think past the words on a page. Truly, they cannot think past the words on a page and have denied me all my rights. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what the internet does to you every day. This is what your phones do to you every day. You have no rights anymore. Your property is stolen whenever they like. Your intellectual property is stolen whenever they like. And all they have to do is ignore your defense until you take them to court and the court hears it, and then maybe things will go your way. I'm fairly confident they'll go my way. But that is the truth of it. And all the people that I've had to deal with on the other side with this situation, what do they all have? Oh, they have iPhones. They have smartphones. They've got Facebook. They've got Instagram. They can't think straight from 1 minute to the next. The only thing that they can rely on for a thought process is a contract that says you've got to give somebody 14 days notice to provide clear title. Well, not if I've already sustained massive fucking damages, I don't. I can walk away from anything anytime I like, and if I present a good argument, it should be taken into consideration and would be if I was dealing with reasonable people. But just as the audacity of the Social Media Research Foundation leads them to rape our rights 24 hours a day in the background without telling anybody, so has the vendor side of my transaction in contract decided to rape all of my rights and steal my money as if I am food for this person. In the same way that data miners like the Social Media Research Foundation, NodeXLGraphGallery.org, consider us food by eating the thoughts in our minds so they can consume them for their own selfish purpose. We are nowhere different to where we were at 2022 years ago. Dealing with tyrant rulers, tyrants in technology, tyrants in social media, tyrants in data mining, tyrants in big tech, tyrants in politics, tyrants in law, tyrants in lawyers, tyrants in contracts, people who are so brain dead, arrogant, godless, and profane that they are blind to the damage and destruction that they are doing, not just to me, not just to the individual, but to everybody. And they honestly expect that with their stupid technology that they can outsmart nature, that they can outsmart the human spirit, that they can outsmart the truth, that they can get away with it. That's how dumb they are. You have to be incredibly stupid to think that you can get away with defying the very fabric of life itself by creating and causing every manner of trauma, suffering, stress, pain, anxiety, loss, hunger, poverty, pollution, degradation, devolution of the human species and our natural world. And within this, they have the gall to present us with scenarios concocted by an algorithm where small-town country lawyer thinks that he is God. Some of you, I don't know if maybe there are people listening to my channel who are a lot older than me and have heard all of this before. And I'm sure that I'm not saying anything new when it comes to the overall impression that we have received from our rulers for the course of modern and ancient history. It is obvious that something is not right, and we are usually ruled over by fucking assholes. What I have endeavoured to portray to you through all my research and my files is that this is pre-coded. It is preset. It is preset by technology that was put into the system a very long time ago. That our concept of time is completely wrong. That it's all happening at once. And that for every time an innocent person is metaphorically crucified in their heart and their mind and their soul by injustice, we are crucifying a living Christ all over again. And I don't care whether you believe in Jesus Christ or not. The message is clear. We live in a system that harms the good, a system that harms the common good. And the technology in use, the people who are running it, the people with the audacity to strip us of all of our rights at a personal, intimate, relationship, business, social, internet, technology levels. These people are the ones that we need to stop. They need to be held to account. Most of them hide in civil law because we're signing terms of service. It's a contract. It's not technically viewed as a crime for them to destroy everything in their path if we've consented to it. Have you ever heard of anything more absolutely ridiculous in your whole entire life? They've actually killed people with this technology. You know, I've gone over it again and again in all the previous files. They've killed people. They've killed celebrities. Stupid algorithm pulling things together and concocting events in people's lives through the goddamn airwaves, impacting their brain and making them make the wrong decisions. All sorts of shit going on. And they keep sitting there spinning their algorithm, data mining, just so they can look important. That's what I wanted to share with you. There are many aspects to the experience that I just had with the property transaction that are data related as well. Very difficult for me to show you that here right now. For privacy reasons, I can't show the guy's name. I can't show the dates. I can't show where it all sort of fits into the programming. EBCDIC. I can, though, once it's all over, and I will endeavour to do that. But for right now, I might be crossing the line if I was to divulge any of that by showing you guys the contract and the mistakes and where the data is actually a no-brainer. It's directly connected to internal coding and an algorithm. And At any rate, I won't be purchasing that property. They have threatened to take an enormous amount of my money in 4 days' time, and they have remained unresponsive to anything that I've had to say about it. I don't have any rights, and if I don't, you don't. It's that simple. You just don't. I think we had more rights in the 50s, didn't we? Before I was born, we had more rights. People were nicer. People paid more attention to making sure they were doing a good job and not simply just trying to get away with doing a shit job and then turning it around and making it look like somebody else's fault. I understand we all have different experiences, and your experience might be that I've not said anything new, that you already know all of this, and that's very well and good. I'm just offering it as another example of the absolute ridiculousness that we are having to tolerate in a modern society, which they happen to call also advanced. Yes, it's so advanced. I'm really feeling how advanced it is. I feel, when you guys stole my money, that you were just showing how advanced you are. I'm obviously referring to them right now. Your contract is incredibly advanced. Those incorrect dates are wow. I mean, really, that's next level stuff. Missing pages, missing license agreements, sabotage. It's incredibly advanced stuff. Look at our advanced society. Big tech making life harder. Stupid people making life more difficult, unreasonable, disrespectful, increasing pain, suffering, trauma, stress, financial insecurity. And no offense to you guys out there, but in this case, I was dealing with a bunch of men. And it is sadly the case that with a lot of them, especially they were older men. They are very deeply conditioned to believe that a woman is automatically wrong and doesn't know what she's talking about. And I'm sure that has played a part in why I haven't been listened to at all. I've also had to legally represent myself, and I know exactly what I'm talking about. Contracts are not that difficult. They're quite clear. And I did my research, but once again, they're still not listening. Don't feel alone if you feel like no one's listening. I'm right here. I get it. I totally understand it. Don't feel alone if you feel that your rights aren't being respected. I'm right here. I totally get it. Don't feel alone if the wrong thing is being done by you to the point where you don't know where you stand in life anymore or how the future is going to pan out for you. I understand. I'm right here. I get it. Sometimes at the end of the day, it's a huge test of faith. And as much as I don't want to pin anyone's hopes on the unseen, it can help sometimes just to take a little bit of comfort in looking at the fact that we are still survivors and looking at where we've been and where we are and trying to keep an open mind to a better day. Just don't do it with a smartphone. Just don't do it with an iPhone. If I had an iPhone, I'd be dead by now. That's 100% certified fact. All the science backs it up. And I've spoken about it here before, and I've gone through it in the files. Stay safe, please. I hope that this podcast has in some way helped. If you are at all battling something, I hope that you can feel some sense of relief in what I've expressed. If it inspires you to take action, my main thing is you do you go on with your own life the way you see fit. I'm just here to tell you, get rid of your goddamn phone. Don't need the internet on you all the time, and it is an automatic connection to a system 24/7 that is just sucking the life out of you until you die, and all they want is your money and your obedience. It's really that sad and sorry, and I don't believe any of them anymore in what they say they're trying to do to help people. They just keep making mistakes. And all the politicians are part of the system now, the social media system. They're all being rewired by Facebook and a silly algorithm. One more time, Clauset-Newman-Moore cluster algorithm in use at nodexlgraphgallery.org, courtesy of the Social Media Research Foundation and Connected Action, if that doesn't say it all. Thank you very much for listening. I will try not to be so long in between podcasts. Until I'm back again, take care and thanks.